States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order, so all council members are in attendance, and would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Tonight we have 3 public hearings. If you would like to address the council, please step forward to the podium, give your name and address for the record. This is time and place for a public hearing as advertised on the matter of Resolution 17-174, a resolution approving services for HVAC controls, security equipment, and emergency generator equipment plans and specifications, and authorizing the city clerk to advertise for bids for the police department headquarters HVAC controls, security equipment, and emergency generator equipment and services. Project PD 18-01 is proof of publication on file.
Yes, it is.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Is there anyone here tonight wishing to address the council in regards to this matter? Seeing none, what's the council's pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This time and place for public hearing is advertised on the matter of ordinance to amend the zoning map as adopted by reference in section 15.02.070 by rezoning lots 259 and 260 Belmont Edition and the north half of the vacated alley from R1 Single Family Residential District to C2 Commercial District as defined in Chapter 15.15. Is proof of publication on file.
Yes, it is.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Is there anyone wishing to speak to the council in regards to this matter?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Bill Hargens, and I live at 70 Crestwood Drive here in Council Bluffs, 51503. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the ordinance 6301. This is my sister, Roseanne Staniford, and she's here to further explain a question to me because I'm half deaf. In case I don't hear your question fully, if you have one for me, she'll repeat it for me so that I can answer it properly, hopefully. The concern that we have is of encroachment of commercial properties in residential areas, and where do you stop granting commercial zoning in residential areas? As you already know, this area is mixed residential and commercial. When I approached the owner of these lots, I made sure they were classified commercial according to the owner and the website as commercial also. I'm talking about Pop County website. And in the very beginning, I had a vision for this property, okay? And it came out in what you have before you, the rendition, okay? And I had all the plans. I met all the city codes and everything according to that. It wasn't until I took it to the planning office that I found out that it was a dual classification, so to speak. County classification of commercial and the city city residential classification. It was then that I had to start the proceedings that brings us to this point tonight. The vision I had, just from our 2030 plan, Bluffs Tomorrow, okay, goals and objectives. This is what I had from the very beginning before this all started for that property. And I did this only because of the neighborhood that it's in and with no residences, because of the soccer fields to the west, because of the school property. So the objectives of vision and goals, section 4 in the 2030 plan, the goal is to enhance and maintain the city's neighborhood and to provide housing and character of the neighborhood and to support amenities and retain and attract residents to Council Bluffs, okay? Number 6 was minimize the encroachment of impacts of commercial areas, industrial uses, and rail corridors adjacent to neighborhoods through land use planning and screening with buffering. I believe in the rendition that I had presented to the Planning Commission and the Zoning Office, and now to you. The rendition is the picture, the 3D picture, even though it's not to scale, will not only enhance this neighborhood, okay, and enhance its value, but it's going to retain a similar look to the existing neighborhood homes. I visited with 3 neighbors, to the south, to the east, and to the north. I showed them my plans, and I explained the use. They were all in favor of it. And the rendition you have is not to scale. It is actually larger than what it really appears to be. It's smaller than what it actually appears to be. It would actually fit, this whole structure would actually fit inside of the white building, the commercial building to the south of it. It's more like a long ranch-style A-frame shaped home. When I visited with Rich and Viola Sane to the east, and we talked, and he asked about the size of the building and all. And I told him it has 12-foot sidewalls. And so we measured what his sidewalls are on his house. It's an A-frame house. 36 inches, 3 feet taller, the sidewalls to this building compared to his home. If you go down 17th Street to the north, on the north side of K as well as down L, M, and N, you have double-level houses, 2-story houses, with 18 and 20-foot sidewalls. This is only 12. This is a low profile compared to what is further north on 17th Street. Is it an encroachment on the neighborhood? I beg to differ, only because, again, with the rendition you have, I'm keeping it as residential as possible. From the very beginning, before I even found out I had to go through all these proceedings. That was my vision for this property. And the other item was service, that it was not providing a service to the neighborhood. I beg to differ there. You look up the word service in the dictionary, there's multiple meanings. One of those meanings is, and I quote, something made or done for public benefit and sometimes without regard for direct profit. What we have around town is our parks that everybody takes pride in. That's a public benefit. We like what we see, it's in our view. No matter where we travel over the viaduct. We're not tunnel vision and look at the concrete. We look at what's above it, the architecture. It's pleasing to see. That's public view. That's a public benefit. Just like the old fountain that's next to what's going to be the law enforcement and first responders plaza. They're public benefits because they're in their view and you like what you see. Every amenity within Bayless Park, it's the same way. Whether you bicycle through it, walk, jog, stop, look, listen, read, or just enjoy what you see. We go to 17th Street, bicycling, jogging, walking down 17th Street. There's no fast traffic there, of course. We look to the west and we see all the soccer fields of the school property. That's pleasant to see, even more so when you see the kids playing. To the east will be the rendition of what I propose. I believe not only is it an enhancement to this neighborhood, I believe it's also an extension of what the soccer fields look and what this is going to mean with grooming and maintaining, which is done at the soccer fields, will be done here. I believe it would be a good fit. Granted, to get this to be a reality, it's going to require, which I didn't believe from the beginning, a rezoning from what the city has residential to commercial. I urge you tonight not to handcuff me, but to take and make this a realization and make this an enhancement for this community, which I believe even the one that decided against it here in the last hours would be happy and be satisfied and will like what she sees when it's completed. This is not going to be a busy building. This is not going to be some manufacturing. This is not going to be a retail establishment. It's a private garage for 3 families. Okay? Most of us have garages. Most of us have our garages full of stuff. Most of us, a lot of us will probably use rental garages even. So we're bringing it under one roof. And I believed that even though we have to go commercial with the building and it's labeled commercial property, I believe the building will fit the neighborhood. I believe it is. I really seriously believe it. The 3 that I visited originally liked what they seen. They agreed and liked it. They welcomed it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask the applicant one question? Sir, in your initial request, you were for the outright C2 zoning of the parcel. You provided me some information last week indicating that you would maybe agree to eliminating some of those uses.
What do you think?
Do you want to agree to eliminating some of those uses that you were looking at?
In the documents you brought to my office last week?
Yes. I read.
I put this together. Is that where you stand right now? Is that what you're actually asking for?
As an alternative, I did read, I did look, and I removed many of what I would not like to see when I pass, and the family does not want the property anymore. I do not want it to be, I want it to be marketable, like I had mentioned to you. And as long as I'm there, it will be what I suggest right tonight.
At this time, would you be willing to execute this agreement, verifying that you would be satisfied with those conditions?
I believe it.
Execute. He said, do you want to execute?
The answer would be no.
Okay.
Because of, like I mentioned a moment ago, I think it's handcuffing me, and that's what I ask you not to do in your decisions. I believe I will, I think what the statements I made would be complete to where I'm satisfied with, and I'm hoping that you will see my point of view of it. Like I said from the very beginning, not after I found out I had to do this in order to convince, okay? It was there from the beginning, and I just had the voice, okay?
So, Dick, can you explain your question? Because I'm not sure he understood the question.
Now, what I was asking you about was just the ones that you had agreed to eliminate, not that you would eliminate any additional ones. If you don't agree to eliminate this, the council has to consider the full-blown, what's permitted in C2, which is some of which they will find offensive.
Yes.
Yes, that's it. Do you want them to vote on what you have now, or do you want to show them what you will put on the agreement?
I want you to vote on what it was presented originally, without the amendment.
Without any limitations?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
You do understand that this council doesn't vote on the style of your building or what your building is going to look like when it's done, that we're charged with deciding that any of the uses in a commercial zoning would be appropriate for that lot. Every one of the uses in a commercial zoning would be appropriate for that lot if we vote to change the zoning. That's what we're voting on, not what your building looks like or what you plan to do with it, but the zoning runs with the land. I just want to make sure that we are seeing eye to eye on that, that you're asking us to say that we believe that that is an appropriate lot for a pawn shop, a tavern, a dog kennel.
As much as I say no to that, as much as Mr. Wade had received information from me, and as much of those 36 items that it could be used for, like you said, 3/4 of them, yeah, almost 3/4 of them were a no, I would not want that there. That is true. I would not want that there. I agree with you. I believe, though, that given, if it ever so happens and comes to pass, that it has to be when I'm not here and it has to be by family selling because of that, it would be limited at the sale time to one individual or group that will honor that wish and not open it to the full blow of this earth.
A deed restriction.
Sir, that's not, if it's not in the zoning, that's not enforceable. So your descendants or whoever you might leave the property to, if it's not in the law, we can't hold it to just your wish to your family.
Okay.
Just so you understand that.
Yes, I understand now.
Okay.
I understand now.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Sure, sure.
Any other questions at the moment?
No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Sure.
Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Not Tommy.
And ma'am, can you give your name and address for the record, please?
I'm Barbara Williamson. I own PacTech on 1620 Avenue J. I live in Shenandoah, Iowa. My husband and I purchased that property with the vacant lot with it, which we considered as all one property. And it's zoned, we thought it was zoned commercial because we have been taxed commercial from day one. And then all of a sudden I find out differently. And you know, my husband and I, when we bought that property, was just god-awful. I mean, it was trash everywhere, cockroaches in the building. My husband probably spent close to $25,000 fixing up the yard, redoing the driveway, cleaning that place up. We had one of the neighbors to the west of us come and thank us and told us that we raised their property value and that if there's a tornado, we were welcome there anytime. And, you know, after we cleaned this place up, what I find is that then you jacked our property taxes up. Then I had to hire somebody to go around and compare my building with other buildings in this town to get them lowered. So then I get through all that. Then I get hit with eminent domain from the school. And that was an absolute nightmare for businesses. And you people are really working very hard to get more business and everything, but what I've seen so far, I don't feel you're very business friendly with us. And they would not give me the money I needed to move. And as it ended up, I mean, I had to have a lawyer twice to finally get some answers from the school because nobody would tell me anything. And then they decided that I should put my driveway, they would take my driveway, and I would have to run my driveway out through the back, through that lot. I mean, it had to be commercial for me to do that. So why would I think that it was any other way? You know? So I find it very difficult to be in this position for you telling me I can't sell that lot because it's residential. And I don't think one of you here would want to be taxed commercial for a lot that was residential, you know, so, I mean, you've put me in a really bad spot. And I'd like to sell it to him. I think he would be a wonderful neighbor for me and for the other neighbors. I've seen how he takes care of his own home. It's beautiful, it's nice, it's clean, and I think our neighborhood would like that. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
If I may, you mentioned that there was a suggestion that you should have that truck turnaround pad on.
On that lot. You know, they
That's-
wanted me to
that's
put
not
another
vacant.
garage door in.
When you say
the
they,
back.
who's
The
they?
school. The school suggested that, so I figured they okayed it with you. But they told me first, see, they would give me like $80,000 or $85,000. Well, I wasn't comfortable with that because cement can be all different prices. And I told them if they could put it in if they think they can do it for that price. Well, they wouldn't come back. So that's when I had to hire the lawyer again. And the lawyer got them to say that they would give us $150,000 to put that driveway in. Well, then we never heard any more. And that's when Jim, who works for me, saw that you had this council meeting with the school. And that's when I found out they were asking you for money for the street. And it had been 400,000 and raised it to 150,000. And my son was here at that meeting, and he said, "Oh dear, that's where the money's coming from."
So just so I understand, you were offered a sum of taxpayer money in order to build that turnaround pad and place a door facing what's now that vacant property that's zoned
Right.
as residential?
Right. And then they would close off my driveway on the
Okay,
pavilion.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There's no, just a couple of points if I could. I think for folks involved, I think it's a good refresher for all of us, including the young men here tonight from the Scouts who are on their, as I understand, their citizenship and community badge. In our country, it can get complicated. We have several different layers of government. We always have. This isn't a new thing. 13 original states had it. We have it. In our area, basically what that means in English is the school. You live in a school district, you live in a county, and if you live in town, you also live in a city. There are different types of local government. They each control different things. The amount you're getting taxed, the state of Iowa has decided, which is the sovereign, it's the parent, it's the controlling entity. It controls the county, the city, and the school. It decided certain powers go to each of these different types of government. The schools do not, or excuse me, the counties control for the state how much your real property is taxed. The city does not do that. The school district does not do that. So they don't, the county doesn't zone property commercial. It taxes property as commercial. Whether it's zoned commercial or not is a city matter. And you know, if you have a residential piece of property and you're paying commercial on it to the county, that would be one of the best, and I happen to be an attorney in my day job, that would be one of the best property tax protests ever if you're paying the commercial tax on a property that's zoned residential. So I'd encourage you to protest that valuation, because you shouldn't be paying nearly twice or perhaps twice tax on a property if it's not really commercial. But that, I mention that too because when a property is being taxed commercial, that doesn't necessarily mean then that it's zoned. They should line up, but in your case, unfortunately, they don't. And, you know, originally this proposal came to us, as I understand, sir, you want us to consider tonight, which is different than what I thought, where we were going, to be honest with you. Commercial, as my colleague Councilmember White indicated, allows a whole lot of things in it. And my understanding is that you were willing, and I understand now that you're not, but just so everybody knows, as I understand it, you were willing to cut out certain uses. We're allowed to create conditions on a piece of property so that certain things can't happen there, because no matter what you may wish to do with it, you raise the point that we all pass away eventually, and when you pass, if the restrictions they don't run with the land, which is legal speak for they're not in the recorded documents, then nobody has to follow them, because the dead can't control stuff like that. Only the laws can. And so, to be frank with you, even as limited, I had some concerns, because I just don't, and it's not with your particular building. It looks like a beautiful rendition as you described. I don't disagree with that at all. But my concern is we have 300 miles of existing streets in our town, believe it or not, in 40 and a half square miles, give or take. We have 300 miles of street. That would mean two sides to the street, of course, 600 miles of curbs, and a large number of those with sewers and sidewalks and lights. And the more we can do to encourage people to stay in existing neighborhoods and not have urban sprawl. I'm not against our city getting bigger, but I don't want to be like our dear friends to the west who keep expanding one direction and then find it difficult to pay for what they already got. And one of my concern is if the more we allow special exceptions and allow commercial things in residential areas, even though I grant you in your case commercial's really close, But if you think about it, commercial's really close to almost every neighborhood in our city, especially in the center or west. If we allow more and more of that encroachment into those residential areas, eventually what happens? You just look to our older neighborhoods, and I'm not against them, I live in one. But the more you have commercial stuff like body shops and that sort of thing, and storage units go into a neighborhood, you have a lot of people, especially those folks who have the means, the money to do so, they leave. They go to other places that are more expensive in town. And then that neighborhood gets fewer and fewer people. And you as a taxpayer, everybody knows here, we spend 6 figures a year eventually to tear down these houses because people move away, neighborhoods go into disrepair. You still have to pay to keep up the streets. You have to pay even to knock the houses down because the heirs and other folks left behind walk away from it, and you and I and everyone have to pay to knock them down. So then we end up with these huge neighborhoods, and then we say, gosh, what went wrong? And so it's just, this is just one really small piece in that, but the more think of the big picture, over the next 50 or 100 years in our neighborhoods, including some that aren't too old right now, but will be in a century, if we start allowing uses in there that discourage people from staying and raising their families there, the only people that are going to be left are the people with no other options. And number one, I don't think that's fair to them because they can't afford to go elsewhere. And number two, long term, the rest of us have to pick up the slack and pay to knock down those neighborhoods. And then we have to abandon those streets and build more of them. And then your taxes go up. So I just see it as a precedent here. You know, the Planning Commission took a look at this, and there's no group that's more pro-growth than the Planning Commission. They're volunteers who serve your fellow residents, and they serve without their expenses reimbursed, unlike us. And Councilmember White used to be a longstanding member of that commission. I was not. They voted 8-2 to not allow this zoning change. 80% of them said this isn't consistent with our plan. The plan that when people go and buy houses, they look at the zoning, they look at, you know, what's the neighborhood to be? Are you less likely or more likely to buy a house in a neighborhood if the plan says in 30 years we expect that to all be bulldozed to the ground? You might not decide to move there, or you might offer a heck of a lot less money. So if we start changing people's expectations and what they bought into, that's not fair to the neighbors. And it's not fair to the taxpayers who paid in that very neighborhood to allow, you've subsidized the building of infill houses, that is houses built in existing areas. You've subsidized with your tax money the building of residences in that area to try to shore it up, to try to make it have enough home-owning folks. And I'm not talking really expensive houses. I'm talking good quality, middle-class houses. This sort of thing, this sort of special exception would move away from that. And I just don't think it's good planning, especially since you're not willing to restrict whatsoever what gets put on there. I just think we ought to stick to what the general rules that everybody buys to and knows, and not come up with special deals that'll change the plan here and there.
Have we concluded the public hearing?
Just you had to come up here. No, you can talk. I mean, I think, but you had to come up here
Oh,
because
you
of.
can't- you
Can't you
can't
not
talk.
talking? No.
No.
Oh, sorry. I guess
If
not.
Nate asks you.
I, as a courtesy to you, I will ask you, yes.
But yeah, you just
Our-
had to do the microphone so they
Our
can hear.
protocol is one time up, you don't keep jumping up
But
and down.
I'll ask you questions so that you can, ma'am, is there something you'd like to say?
My problem is, like, here we were innocently bought a commercial, it had been a commercial business before we bought it.
Yeah,
And they had owned that lot.
yeah.
So we had no realization that that was residential. Now, why would you sell it to a commercial business if it was residential?
Did you, you know, I'm certainly not going to give you legal advice because I'm not your attorney and so I can't.
But I think the realtors or whoever is selling these properties need to find out so that businesses, when they buy them, don't get in this situation.
You would have gotten a title insurance, and I should defer to you. This is your area of
You
expertise.
should
not
have, if there was an appraisal or a title insurance policy that was issued at the time, both of those documents would have reflected the correct zoning on that property.
But did you say it's two zonings?
Yes.
No. Well, there's zoning and then there's text.
Yeah, because you've got the commercial property with your PacTech building and the vacant lot all on one property card. but they aren't all the same zoning. And so your title insurance
Well, nobody
binder would have
explained
shown that.
Nobody explained that to us. We figured it was just part of our business.
No, and you're,
I
if
think
you go
that's-
back and look at
That's
your,
very wrong, that it should be pointed out to people buying these businesses.
It would be.
You know, I mean, because it's not fair to me.
What they're
anybody
saying
else
is it
that-
would have been twice. It would have been pointed out on the appraisal and the title insurance you got when you purchased it. And so if anyone is at fault, it's probably your attorney, or if you weren't represented by counsel, then it's incumbent on you to understand that.
Well, I don't know, but.
And the other thing I just want to say, I know because it's confusing, and Nate told you a little bit about the government, but the school district coming in and making you an offer and saying, why don't you use that back lot as an exit, and we'll give you whatever the dollar number it was, does not change the zoning, does not make it
But then it's,
commercial lot.
nobody's residing on it. You said somebody has to build on it. That's what you were saying, it's residential, so somebody would have to build on that lot. So how could you put the driveway there?
Well, the school, I think what the mayor, if I may say, he's saying the school may have offered you money and then given you a suggestion, but that suggestion's not any good, if that's what they told you. And they don't have the
well, then I
power.
would've been-
They don't do zoning. Schools don't zone, cities do.
they didn't have the power to tell you you could put that there.
And what was I supposed to do if they were gonna take my driveway?
And at that point, I'm sure your attorney would have helped you work through and maneuver what you could and couldn't do before accepting it. I mean, I think you indicated you were
Well, the attorney did
represented.
say that they were gonna give me the money to put the driveway there, so. It's a problem.
He or she may have assumed that the city would let you do that, but you shouldn't assume that.
You're not very business friendly.
Well, we have to see, well, to be business friendly, with respect, I'm business friendly, but one of the things is the rules apply to everybody. And I know there are a lot of laws, and I don't know each and every one of them myself even, but they still all apply to me. If we start waiving them for you, then so that you know from a legal point of view, that could cause us trouble, because then we're playing favorites, and it's no disrespect to you, but if I vote to say, you're a nice person, you're in a fix here, let her have it, then if Joe Blow comes along and wants it changed, and I don't, he's got a pretty good argument against the city, meaning you all who pay the taxes to defend us, when we don't let Joe Blow do it. So then we have to let everybody do it. And then the rules don't mean anything anymore. So if you buy a house and you live in a residential district, and then suddenly somebody wants to build a rendering plant next door, how do I stop them if zoning no longer works? I mean, when you buy stuff, you have rights, but the people around you have rights too. And that's what we as a city exist to try to balance those rights, your rights against your neighbor's rights. And it's not perfect, and it doesn't make anyone completely happy. Trust me, you should see our mail. But we do our best to try to be fair, and in my view, the best way to be fair is to apply the rules the same to everybody. They're written down on the website. I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to follow, but they apply to everybody. And I'm sorry, I just don't think we ought to start making exceptions, because then we have to make them for everybody. And I just don't like how that'll end.
We closed the public hearing portion.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the council in regards to this matter? Seeing none, is there, the public hearing's
Motion to
closed, is
approve
there
the
a
ordinance.
motion?
Second.
So I'm going to start with, I talked to your neighbors, and they said, the one said that when she signed the document for you saying she liked the building, much like I liked the building, she didn't realize that a commercial zoning would mean all those things would go across from her. And I think that, you know, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. That's why I went and talked to the people in the neighborhood. The thing about that neighborhood is that that zoning was changed to residential, and then new houses were built. So those people that bought those houses and own those houses, whether they're rentals or owner-occupied, had a reasonable expectation that they weren't going to have a commercial influence. And I'm a real estate appraiser by trade, and the assumption that building, you know, changing the zoning to commercial across the street from these residential homes is going to help their value is completely inaccurate. It's going to hurt their value because that means that any one of these items could someday go across the street from their home. And so when people look to buy that house, they'll say, wait a minute, a dog kennel can be right across the street from me? People can work on their cars, blasting their engines at my house right across the street from me. So when I talked to the two neighbors that definitely didn't want it, I still wasn't sure. But then tonight, when you said that these were items you wouldn't want to see, I'd have to believe that would mean you wouldn't want us to change the zoning across the street from your home to allow this in your neighborhood. And to ask us to do it to another neighborhood, to allow you to do that to a neighborhood that you wouldn't want it done to yours, I think is not a precedent that this council would want to set. We shouldn't be asked to do things to other neighborhoods that the applicant wouldn't have in their own neighborhood. This property is zoned R1. There was some discussion at study session today that everybody knows a house wouldn't be built on that, and I don't think that's accurate at all. We've seen infill housings not only, be built alongside of things like stadiums, we've had them be built right alongside of railroad tracks. So the fact that this would never be used as residential is not a fact at all, and it's a huge assumption. I can't vote in favor of this, and predominantly because the neighbors who have no view of, no real commercial influences against them right now in those houses, and the fact that you wouldn't want it in your neighborhood and you didn't want to see these uses, I would never be able to vote in favor of that.
Any other discussion?
Just to clarify for the record, the motion to approve the ordinance, that's is contrary to the recommendation of the Planning Commission. The ordinance as written up provides for the zoning as desired by the applicant, and so I'm making the motion to approve the ordinance. Mr. Hargens, as he indicated earlier today, has worked diligently with the city, and PacTech had worked diligently with the city as well as the school district prior to this, trying to find accommodation for the future of that particular property. Mr. Hargens has offered a number of compromises. We discussed those compromises at length during the study session. It was pretty much opined that any sort of compromise was unenforceable as a matter of zoning, and so those compromises were pretty much shot down during the study session. And so if contract zoning is never an acceptable alternative, then it was decided just to press on with changing the zoning on this particular property. As we've also discussed during the study sessions and elsewhere, this property that is essentially one small postage stamp sized property within an area that is already checkerboarded as both residential and commercial. Great deal of expense has been made to redirect streets, to take out a number of homes, to change the character of the surrounding neighborhood in a pretty significant way, and those businesses that already exist in and around that area are going to remain there. So I don't think it's a surprise to any of the residents living there that they are already surrounded by commercial property, and here we have an opportunity to see additional development take place. With that additional development will be an increase of the assessable tax value, which means more revenue for the city, because something will be built there that wasn't there before, As was previously pointed out, Council Bluffs likes to say that we are a welcoming place, especially for small business. So this is our opportunity to demonstrate this in an area that already has a number of small businesses in the area. I believe that the use that has been set forth for this property is reasonable. Until today, no other property owners had objections to this. So for all the reasons aforementioned, I think it's important that this council take stock of its obligation to exercise discretion. Many times, regulations and practices are cited to say, well, that's in the plan, that's in the regulation. We really shouldn't deviate from that. And our job as elected officials are to determine what sorts of development are not in the best interest of the community on a case-by-case basis. And that's what this particular case is about, is determining in this instance, does this make sense for the property owner, for the buyer, and for the surrounding neighborhood? And in the exercise of that discretion, I, for one, feel that it is a reasonable request, and I intend to support it.
Just for the sake of the record, if I could, we discussed this at this afternoon's study session, and I would disagree. I did not say that contract zoning or coming up, in my words, a special deal for a given property or person is automatically illegal or unenforceable. I said it was a bad idea. We can do it, and you know, the applicant had, as I understand it from the city attorney, had come and indicated there were certain things he was willing to take off the table, the things that Councilmember White had indicated. There were certain things that the gentleman said he wouldn't want in his own neighborhood or wouldn't want to see go on there as long as he's alive. That's what I thought we were going to be voting on this evening, and it turns out that no, he's not willing. So there was either a misunderstanding or he's changed his mind, which he certainly can do. But those compromises he put forward, if he did, he's withdrawn them, so they don't exist anymore. It'd be everything allowed in commercial. The neighbors, once they found out that there were other possibilities, and we weren't just voting on what the garage looks like, which I consider more a very nice outbuilding. I come from an extended farm family, and we'd call that an outbuilding. Garage, that's not really a garage, especially in town. It's more of an outbuilding. It would probably fit 8 cars in it, at least. So when folks say garage, maybe when you think garage, I don't happen to have a garage, but if you think garage, you're probably thinking something 12 by 20 or a little bit more along those lines, or perhaps bigger than that, but not 8 cars size. You know, and ultimately, on that point, we'd be allowing all these things. The neighbors have said they don't want it. And my point this afternoon about why I don't like contract zoning is twofold, which I'll briefly say, so that folks here can hear it. I don't like it because right now you can go into zoning. Now, it's fair enough. They're not the easiest things to read, but they're public record. You can go look up what's your property zoned or one you're thinking of buying. When we do this contract zoning, it's nearly impossible, and sometimes impossible. If you're looking at a house to buy in a neighborhood, you won't necessarily know the house across the street that looks pretty residential to you and is zoned residential if you do your homework, as you should, or your title insurance or your lawyer updating the abstract when you're looking to buy. It'll say residential. You might not know there's this deal that place can have a dog kennel 10 feet from your house. If you live in, like I do, in half a town where houses are next to each other pretty close, that might change whether you're willing to buy it, but you won't know that, especially if we start adding more exceptions like this. So it's a bad precedent. And secondly, it's something more that the city staff has to keep track of. Instead of, can I borrow that for a second? Instead of having the maps of the areas that are zoned various things that are easy to follow, they're going to have to look at each lot and all these different things to keep track of, to enforce this, because as a city, you don't want us to agree to something and then not hold them to it. So we might have to sue about it later. Neighbors won't know about it because they can't find the records. And they're gonna, in other words, we're gonna have more staff members keep track of all that. That's gonna increase the number of staff we've got. I don't know how you expect to do that without raising your
To
taxes.
clarify though, Nate, we're not voting for contract zoning. We're
Not
doing that.
anymore.
Not
That's what
anymore,
he was
not
saying,
anymore.
that
He
we
want-
said it wasn't
I was
Al
correcting
said
the
in
record.
his discussion that we discussed at study session
discarded.
that we threw it out because it couldn't be enforced, and that wasn't true. And
That's inaccurate.
I do also want to clarify
He was saying, but
that it is not a postage stamp size lot. It is a 10,340 square foot piece of property, which is almost double the normal lot size in mid-city Council Bluffs, which is about 5,500 square feet. So I just wanted to make sure that that misconception was dispelled. It's not a postage stamp size lot.
And it's not a checkerboard of zoning. There's the zoning map.
There's the
It's
zoning.
very
That's not
clearly
checkerboard.
delineated.
Could you say which color is which so folks can?
Red
Otherwise,
is
otherwise you're
commercial.
100% right.
Red is commercial, yellow is residential.
and that,
And understand
I wanna show that
that
too.
every one of these properties, this one, all of these, and all of these are residential. These three are new houses built in 99 and 2000. They were built believing that everything across the street from them was going to be residential. So what I would ask is if I went up and bought the property behind Councilman Ringenberg, and I put in a commercial use right behind his house, when he knew he paid top dollar for a neighborhood that didn't have commercial behind his house, have to venture to guess that most of us, including you, would not be happy with the prospects of your property value dropping out.
He did,
So-
he did build a warehouse on that property, by the way, right next to mine.
Can you see it?
Yeah,
Are you happy about it?
works for me.
Well, I would just tell you, I'm going to drive up and look at that one, but I would just tell you that you keep saying that you have to look at what's best for the neighborhood, and you've given consideration to only one party.
Well,
The other street, you've given no consideration to. You've basically said that the residences that live on that street that have said it's going to impact their value and they don't want this use there are meaningless to you, and that we have an obligation as a council to only give consideration to this business. And I don't understand why, when we were doing medians, 4 people didn't want it and it was over. But we have people that live on the street that don't want it, and suddenly only one property matters to you.
I did not say that the opinions of the other property owners were meaningless to me. As a matter of fact, Mr. Hargens went to some effort to collect signatures from those property owners saying that they had no problem with it, and no problem was verbalized until this afternoon.
But this is what he got them to sign. He got them to sign a document that they looked at the building he wanted to build, and that they didn't have a problem with that building. I don't have a problem with that building either. It's beautiful. He didn't tell them that we were changing the zoning and that he could sell it tomorrow and a kennel could go on the property. You know, it's very misleading. So then when they find that out, then they're not in favor of it. So to say that he went to a lot of trouble to inform the neighbors is completely inaccurate. If I was voting
made an
on
effort.
whether his building is a great building, I would vote 100%. It's a beautiful building, no doubt about it. But that has literally nothing to do with the zoning of a piece of property.
I'd like to read it short. It's an email I received. Again, I don't understand why somebody coming in right before the public hearing and having an opinion should be discounted for being late when people can come in 5 months after a public hearing and have an opinion and we listen to them. It's, so this says, and I received it today from Diane Nelson, and she says this. My name is Diane Nelson. I live on the corner of 17th and Avenue K. When I signed that paper giving consent for the zoning change on the property across the street, I didn't realize that any business could move in there. I don't like that. I also don't want to see it changed because the other 2 properties are on that side of the street are zoned residential. Thank you. Could that
I
be in
didn't
the
get that
record?
email from her though, and the hard thing is we have one thing, I mean.
I got that email, but
You did, I didn't get it.
a little bit of clarification and explaining why I'm going to vote to rezone this property as commercial. As they showed in this map, and it's up on the screen, all the red is commercial, all the yellow is residential. So this property abuts commercial property currently, for one. For two, everything to the direct west of this property is now the new stadium. Or portions of the, it's not the brand new part of the stadium, there's soccer fields and baseball fields, it's a whole big complex. So when these people built these houses here, I'm sure all the fields that are here now used to be houses. They didn't plan on a soccer field being there either. However, the school board went in, offered the people money, eminent domain, the whole process. However, it went down, but now they have a field behind them.
Use any eminent domain.
Maybe they didn't use eminent domain. I don't know how.
They didn't.
They offered them money. They bought out their land.
Yes, they did.
However, the people who didn't get their land bought out, that's a little bit further to the north, they might not have planned on having a soccer field right next to them either. So the reason I'm voting yes is, one, if this whole map was yellow and that little red box that's the one we're going to rezone, if they want to rezone it commercial, I don't think it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think, in fact, I'm almost positive I would not vote to rezone it commercial inside of a residential property. So this is a case-by-case basis, and we have an empty lot sitting in our community with a gentleman that wants to build on it and improve the community, improve that empty lot. We don't have a proposal for somebody to build a house on it. I think we should rezone it, and that, I just want to explain why I'm voting to rezone this property to commercial.
I just have two brief points to that. The first is, if ever I agree to an exception on a case-by-case basis to allow a commercial in a residential area, if you vote to allow this rezoning straight up commercial with no restrictions, then what you're telling me is I have to fight tooth and nail every exception that would ever encroach on a residential area, or the floodgates have opened and commercial can go there. If so, I will move to block every attempt to rezone any residential area to anything other than an R classification. And secondly, small business is important, yes, but they are not more important than the residents who live here, many of whom have far less money. We have a lot of poorer folks in our community who do not have businesses. They barely have a job and barely can make ends meet. We have a lot of folks struggling. Their voice is just as important, especially in these older neighborhoods where a lot of the folks in that position disproportionately live. They're good, hardworking people. Their voice matters too. So when we hear this mantra of we're anti-business, I take great issue with that because no, I'm not anti-business. I'm anti-playing favorites to business. Residents matter just as much, especially poor ones.
Nate, I asked you today, the empty lot, if it was commercial now and somebody wanted to build a house on it to make it residential, would you let them build a house?
I said as a general rule, no. My practice has been to look at contract zoning on a case-by-case basis. However, if the precedent we're establishing, based on what you said, is that it would make a difference to you, and please correct me if I'm misstating what you're saying. It'd make a difference to you if that whole area was
If
yellow.
the whole map was red
Or
was
yellow. And a red.
Absolutely, it's completely different.
Well, then you have forced my hand to fight letting any part of a yellow map ever go red. That's really yellow, and there's no red near it. In other words, it's really residential and there's no commercial near it. I will fight tooth and nail to avoid any
probably agree with you.
commercial. Any commercial?
If this whole map was red, I would say 9 times out of 10 agree with you.
So if, like, there was a 5 square mile area that was all residential and they had no grocery store there, you wouldn't think that that would be an appropriate use there as an exception?
Did I not say case-by-case basis, 9 out of 10? I mean,
Well, but case-by-case basis, my point is a case-by-case basis is being used against me. That if I allow a commercial into any residential area, then it's free game. I can no longer argue that there's too much commercial.
I don't think that's what we're saying. We're just saying this is so commercial, and especially when you consider that even though it does look like a lot of that yellow is residential, it's no longer residential. Now it's by the school. It's sports fields. I mean, it's changed.
But if you lived at the northwest corner of Avenue K and 17th Street, and a house that was just built with mostly tax money, subsidizing it, by the way, in 1999 or 2000, you might, to be fair, I would think you might feel a bit differently about it by
went
a
like
giant
the sports fields there,
commercial-sized
quite
garage
frankly. I
being
wouldn't
built.
want
No,
the
actually,
traffic of the
that
sports
woman that
fields
emailed
necessarily.
us said the owner of this property said the sports fields are great. They're beautiful, great to look
I'm
at.
just saying everybody has different, I mean, to me, that's what's made a difference to me as well. Having that traffic there, having that change, we're not talking about a a lot of residential. I mean, we're,
And you guys are saying all that, it could be a dog kennel. Well, it could be a little ice cream shop for the kids that play football on Sundays after the game to stop and get ice cream too.
And I think that that too is a good point, Roger. I think it's a really good point because he went and told the neighbors it wouldn't be that. And his mere commitment tonight that he will not restrict the zoning on it, that he won't take any of the uses out, tells us that this neighbor, when she says that, you know, she thinks something else might be going there, it's probably a really good chance that,
Well,
you know, they were literally went door to door and told them this is what they were going to put there. But tonight, when you say, I'm not willing to do contract zoning, I'm not willing to limit any of the uses, kind of makes you realize that maybe the neighbors were misled.
Well, I believe I don't think the neighbors are I believe the gentleman's gonna put in what he says he's gonna put in, or he wouldn't have had these drawings drawn up. These aren't cheap. I'm sure he went through a lot of trouble to do this. But
But it's
after he
unenforceable when he
passes,
dies.
absolutely, after he passes, like I said, maybe an ice cream shop goes in there. Maybe it's something that really enhances the community. Maybe they tear it down and put a park. I mean, there's a number of things. You're talking about all the negative. There's a lot of positives that could go in there as well, including this building.
As someone who does not live on the West End, I have to say that we seem to, in these neighborhoods, take great liberties with what gets allowed next to people who live there. We don't do that in other parts of town. Why is that? Why do we care less about what the residents
Has something
that
like this
pay-
come up in the east end of town that we voted opposite of this? Personally, I have not on the east end.
Well, those proposals don't seem to come up, but if one were to come up, I obviously I'm not going to guess how you vote, but I would suspect.
I would vote very similar if it was on the east end, west end, north end, or south end.
And the fact that it has more residential, literally touching and surrounding this lot than it does have commercial, doesn't change your opinion. Because the properties
these
across
houses
the street
are not houses.
and next, right, but what I'm saying is the zoning on two sides of it literally has houses. Those are houses.
These are houses here.
Those are
they're all
houses
touching
straight across
commercial
the
right now.
street.
Straight across the
Houses.
north.
Houses.
Those are house fields.
That is not true. That
Those
is
are
houses.
there's houses right there, but to the
Avenue
other
K,
side,
there are
fields.
4 houses there.
Right, on that side, but
Right.
across the street is
It's all fields.
Across
all-
17th is
Correct.
fields, but
It's
what
all
I'm
fields.
saying is that it only has one side of that property touching commercial. The rest of it is literally facing and touching the other 2 sides. That's residential. So when you say because it's got more commercial, that doesn't make sense to
What's
me.
right here?
That's the fields or
That's
blanket lot.
still residential zoning. It's not a commercial property. It's not going to have trucks coming in and out. It's not going to have an auto body shop. But even saying so, let's take that side out of it. Now you've only got 3 sides. 2 of the 3 remaining sides are residential properties.
But like the ones to the right of it are already touching commercial on the backside of it. I mean, they knew that was there.
But we're
that's a-
increasing the encroachment.
I think we have a
Yeah, I
very
think it's-
fundamental disagreement.
Yeah, I think so, too.
I think it
Well,
ultimately
and
comes.
it's only the second reading, so I know Melissa said a few minutes ago, and we
I
only
haven't heard
had
anything
one
from anybody
email.
other than positives.
And those people didn't know at that time that it was going to be a full-on commercial. So, you know, we can give them the opportunity to come to the third reading. We have one person that wants it, one. We have one person that literally lives there. The person that wants it doesn't live in the neighborhood. We have somebody that lives in the neighborhood that's emailed you and told you she doesn't want it.
I didn't get that, but yeah.
Well,
I have
these
2
guys
letters,
did.
though.
I did.
From what I'm going off of is what I have, and I have 2 letters from people that are in the neighborhood saying.
But
they're-
one of those 2 are the emails that the rest of
Public
the
hearing,
council people
sir.
got
Public
that
hearing's
said,
closed.
that said that she was misled. That is the second one at 1624 Avenue K, the email these guys got earlier. That's the woman who said she was misled. So what I'm saying is that it doesn't really matter. I mean, if the rest of them don't want it, then it's incumbent on them to protect their neighborhood against people that don't live there and, you know.
I think ultimately it comes down to, I believe you're right, it comes down to a philosophical difference. I believe, just for the sake of the record, I believe very strongly in zoning. We've had it since 1928. It's why neighborhoods are neighborhoods and don't have rendering plants next to them. If you looked at the original plat of the city, I don't think most people would want to live next to uses that existed at that time. We put this in place for a reason. And ultimately, if you want to change the zoning in the area, let's do it in a straightforward way rather than granting piecemeal exceptions. Because if we do it that way, within 100 years, probably 50 years, all those houses will first go into derelict decline, become very cheap rentals that take advantage of people who have very few options. Then all of us as taxpayers, no, I'm not. If you look at the neighborhoods, the number of 249, whatever it is, 649A houses that we keep tearing down in these older neighborhoods. The neighborhoods we're doing that right now in are the neighborhoods that mayors council members, doctors, and lawyers lived in 80 to 100 years ago. Those are areas, they were areas of great wealth, believe it or not. And over time, through policies of disincentivizing those areas, people moved out. They became cheaper and cheaper rentals that took advantage of more and more people until we as taxpayers tear them down. And then we wonder, why the heck did that all happen? We did it. Little steps like this make the problem
I
worse.
just want to clarify, I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, Sharon, but just to clarify, I don't think you're saying the gentleman was dishonest with him. He told him what he was going to do with the property. I don't think he said.
Correct, and that's why I said, you
Just
know,
wanna make sure you're not
there's,
saying-
what's happened here is that we've gotten away from addressing issues that are the real issue. We do it all the time here.
I would agree
This
with
is
that.
a zoning issue, not a building design issue. It never was. And so when you go around, because, you know, Mr. Ringberg said, well, the neighbors were in favor of it until this afternoon. No, they weren't. You didn't tell them what the potentials were about zoning changes. You showed them the building you were going to build, which has nothing to do with what we're doing here tonight. And I guess I'm completely shocked at the particular council people that are choosing to change the zoning based on one person's request when these exact same people said, well, nobody came and said they didn't want it or that they did want it. Well, you know, I guess what I'm saying is you guys went door to door, knocked on doors to try to get people to be against the medians. Did any of you go down there and talk to the neighbors to see if this is what they wanted? Did you go knock on their door and ask them?
I offered to talk with the gal, and she never got back to me.
Well,
But
go
yeah,
down there and knock on their doors
sure
and,
will.
and ask them, you know, do you understand that this isn't a garage? Do you understand that this could literally be an automotive shop?
A lot of them thought it was storage units for public use as well, which was misleading. It's not.
Yeah, that's what one of the renters asked me today. She said, we don't need any more storage.
There's a lot of misinformation out there, I agree.
There is a lot of misinformation, but I think that perpetuating what we're voting on tonight is this guy's beautiful garage is not being truthful with
I'm definitely
anybody.
not voting on the beautiful garage. I'm voting to change it to C2 ordinance for sure.
And that's, you know, if the people, and that's the whole thing. If they don't want it there, then it's incumbent on them to come and tell you that they don't want it there. And I would suggest, so the taxpayers of Council Bluffs, if you live in a residential zoning that has not one commercial building on your street at all, and you hope to keep it that way, you make sure you watch these agendas in these meetings, because all it takes is one person that doesn't live in your neighborhood to decide that now you're going to have a commercial building across the street from you, because that's what it is. Well, I mean,
Pactec-
this guy
the
lives
Pactec
over on
building-
Crestmont.
The Pactec
He
building
said he
is
doesn't
on
want
the
this
same
in his
lot.
neighborhood.
Sharon, you said on the same street. The Pactec building's on the same lot.
Do you understand that Avenue K is the street that this addresses to? This is an Avenue K street.
I can read that.
On Avenue K, I said on that street,
There's commercial there.
those are residential properties until you
It's
get
not
to
Avenue K
16.
over here that's red? Avenue K's right here, right? Is that
I
not
said
red?
until you
Across
get
the
to
street.
16. Those are all residential homes. And I guess what really bothers me is this gentleman told us that these are all uses he wouldn't want to go into his own neighborhood. How disrespectful of the neighbors there then. What, are they less than because they don't live in an expensive neighborhood? It's okay to do that to them? I mean, this very person that wants to put this in, that wants to change the zoning, literally said these are all uses he wouldn't want to see on the property, and they are all uses he wouldn't want in his own neighborhood.
Sharon,
I
I'm-
just find it just shocking.
I'm not sure if you were on council when the whole ConAgra deal went down, but we for sure voted to let them go further into the residential and knock down houses.
We didn't vote anything. They bought each one of those as they came up for sale, and they knocked each one of those
Is
down.
any of that rezoned, or could they just go in
I
there
think
with
after
this
they were
residential?
knocked down, after they were all gone, they came and asked for a rezoning. But when I was on council, they bought them every time one went up for sale. This council did not go
And
in
then rezoned it though, correct?
after the houses were
I
gone.
was a community, I was a
That's-
neighborhood leader at the time, and I blocked
That's
them
nothing
from
to do.
crossing the street. No, they'll do it over my dead body. They will not cross that street. I was a number of people, among many people, who blocked it and
These
will
guys
to the
aren't
death.
crossing the street either.
It's crossing a literal line is my problem.
All right. You know what?
more-
It's okay because the information's out there. That's what we need. That's
We
what
wouldn't do it
public
in the
hearing's for.
west end. Why
It's
do we
out
do
there.
it to the
Yep.
east end? Why do we do it to the
Because-
west end people? It's not
I
right.
just calling the question.
always
We have
do.
a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to pass the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay.
All right, stay tuned. Procedures, this is time and place for public hearing as advertised on the matter of Resolution 17-175, which is a resolution authorizing the vacation of that part of 11th Avenue right-of-way abutting properties legally described as Lot 6, Block 11, Riddle subdivision, in the east one half of the vacated alley adjacent along Lot 1, Block 14, Riddle subdivision, and to vacate that part of 11th Ave right-of-way extending from the east right-of-way line of South 6th Street to the west right-of-way line of South Main Street, and to vacate the west north-south alley in Block 15, Riddle subdivision. Is proof of publication on file?
Yes, it is.
Have any written protests been received?
None received.
Is there anyone here tonight wishing to address the council in regards to this matter?
My name's Jeff Griffiths, 104 Cambridge Circle, Council Bluffs, Iowa, 51503. My family owns the property abutting this. No notification was given to any of us at the office or at the home. Didn't know anything about it until a gentleman called me today and notified me. I'm all for the city selling, vacating property, getting rid of property, and get it back on the tax roll, so I am in favor of this. But somehow, the notification process has to be guaranteed that the people are finding out this. There's been a lot of projects that's happened in that area, and I'm friends with all the people that own the property down in there, and a lot of them have not been notified. It just kind of gets pushed through. Nate?
Oh, I was just going to say, just as a helpful, and I don't think this necessarily applies to your situation, but we get this question a lot generally, so if you'll let me say. The first thing is there's a two-step process. There's an intent. This is tonight's vote, where we're going to let it go. It's not we're going to now sell it to somebody. So tonight we're not.
I understand. I don't need a civic license. I
No,
understand
but just so
what's going on.
No, but not everybody knows that. It's
Okay.
a two-part process. That's why I say it might not necessarily apply to you. The second thing is they get sent to the address of record, which, and I understand your case might be your folks. If I understand correctly, their address. It gets sent to your address of record, so that's why it's really important that as a company, it doesn't necessarily get to your physical address at that location.
I understand that too, but I'm
Okay, but not everybody does.
Neither locations that are affiliated with that property received anything.
Okay,
All
if-
right.
We
If
did
I
talk
could-
about that today, just to make sure.
I
that-
just, so people, I try to help demystify
right.
this so people can understand what we're doing.
The Community Development Director got back to me after the study session. He reviewed the process. It is not required for a mere vacation. Now, if there'd been a transfer, yes, there'd been notice given. But the actual vacation does not require notification to individuals. There was a publication, is my understanding.
But I was assured that it was sent to me. So you're telling me it's not something they have to do, but someone
I
said
don't
they
know
did send it.
who assured you that it was sent to you.
Today is when Brandon said that.
He thought it got sent out, but.
I don't think he was. Yeah, I can't tell you exactly what
Anyway, I'm
Brandon
for
was
selling
saying
city
there. But
property, so that's all I got to add to this. So.
I think we should probably just go ahead and delay until the next meeting anyway, on this one, because, I mean, if we're vacating it, the people abutting it probably should know that we're doing it, so.
Yeah.
Well,
I
maybe
agree
we
with
can
that.
change the process. If we're going to vacate it, we should notify them too, since that's
Yeah.
not part of the process.
Well, the law doesn't require it, doesn't mean we can't do it.
Right, we could
I
still-
agree with you. I agree
I
with,
think our process should
I thought it did, though. on
more
vac-
so try and
we-
help.
I agree with
Maybe
you.
then
I
More
agree with
information
you.
better. Hey,
Yeah, I
we're
agree
going
with
to
you.
vacate
We
it.
didn't
You want to
realize
buy it? Let's let you buy it too.
I agree with you.
So maybe we can ask Brandon Dick to put that in the procedure.
Process, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So, motion to postpone?
To the next meeting and ask them to go ahead and send letters out to Mr. Griffiths and those abutting that, we're looking at vacating this. I mean, obviously, nobody's using this alley, but, about the time that we vacate it, somebody will claim that they needed it to get to their property. So they should be notified that we're doing it and
Agree.
move on, so.
Second.
Any other discussion? Motion is to postpone. All those in favor signify by
Oh, and to send a notice to the,
send a notice to the adjacent property owners.
And to August 28th.
Sure.
Yeah, until August 28th, yes.
Second, concur with that?
yes.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Madam Clerk?
Ordinance 1300 to amend Title 8 Public Safety and Morals of the 2015 Municipal Code by amending Chapter 8.44.015 Criminal Trespass.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Can I waive? Thanks. Motion to waive third.
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion to waive? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-176, authorizing the mayor to extend funding from the City of Council Bluffs to the Council Bluffs Convention and Visitors Bureau to and including June 30th, 2018, in the amount of $600,000.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-177, granting approval to apply for a resource enhancement and protection grant for the Tom Hannafin's River's Edge Park Woodland Restoration Phase 1 project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-178, accepting the bid of Bluffs Paving and Utility Company, Inc. in the amount of $1,507,331.54 for the Eastern Hills Drive and Cedar Lane construction project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-179, accepting the bid from Transtel Central, Inc. in the amount of $330,000 for the Broadway Fiber relocation project.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-180, approving change order number 2, adding $152,672.47 to the contract amount for the levy certification project geotechnical MR2.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution 17-181, authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with HDR Engineering, Inc. for engineering services in connection with the WPCP master plan.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Is there a discussion?
Yes. During the study session and last and a few weeks back in June, during another study session, wish those were recorded so you guys could hear the discussion and the presentations. The June meeting, we had a slide presentation by our Director of Public Works, and that was with regard to nutrient reduction requirements being imposed by the state of Iowa and by the EPA. And also a discussion about the capacity at our wastewater treatment facility, otherwise known as the Friendly Local Sewer Plant. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that upgrades will be required because as the city expands, we require additional capacity. And at the same time, we also need to carefully study these requirements that are being imposed by environmental regulators in Des Moines and Washington, D.C. I note that we're still paying for the past plant upgrade that was completed in 2011, and we'll be paying for that until the year 2030. And now we're considering other costly measures, partly by capacity and partly by bureaucrats who are telling us what we need to do with regards to our treatment capacity. I'm reluctantly supporting this, not just for the reasons that I just talked about, but because I'm kind of nervous by the way that the contract has been presented to the council. In reading over the contract that was provided to us as part of the study packet, it's really not a contract at all. It's kind of an open-ended invitation to enter into a number or a series of contracts. Specifically, Section 1.1 says that the contract shall apply to as many projects as the owner and engineers agree. But there's no definition as to what those projects are or may be in the future. Secondly, Section 3, the compensation portion states, quote, compensation for engineer services shall be in accordance with Part 5 of each task order. There are no task orders provided for in the contract. All that's in there is a task order template. So we don't know the scope of the services or how much each segment of the services will be costing. Returning back to the nutrient reduction briefing that we received back last June, I cite that because the first half of that presentation was heavily premised upon those environmental assertions being made by those environmental regulators in Des Moines and Washington, D.C. But the second half of the briefing concerned pretty much how these expansions would impact sewer user rates and what would be appropriate rates after this new plant capacity was constructed. As you all will recall, we just finished passing a rate increase in 2015 that is not yet fully implemented. Now, I was assured by Mr. Reeder, our Public Works Director, today that a rate study is not being entertained at this time. However, it was pretty clear to me that that would be on the table pretty quickly. So while we need to understand these environmental requirements and the capacity needed for our city moving forward, I am very cautious to keep a careful eye on any suggestions about what will be appropriate sewer user rates going forward.
I think at this point it's reasonable to enter into a policy that attempts to comply with our environmental obligations, and at the same time tries to align any upgrades or replacements with the business necessity. That is, when we need to upgrade anyway, hopefully finding a way to come into compliance, to remain in compliance with environmental standards, but in a way that will be at the least amount of cost. We have to comply with the federal and state environmental standards, that we have no choice in that. And as expensive as they are, I too have concerns about the cost, but the costs of not doing it in the end probably are much worse if we all think a moment about it. But, you know, in the end, if we can find a way to do it in the least intrusive way possible and aligned with what we would do anyway, and what we do anyway can be done in a slightly different way that would meet these newer environmental requirements for not much more cost, I hope. But of course, there's no guarantee in that. I concede that. The better. Because if we do nothing, the federal government and the state government, predominantly the state government taking lead on this, will come in and make us do it on their timetable. And their current plan, though perhaps politically popular across the state, is not good for those of us who live in cities. And I say that as a person who's many extended family relations farm. The current plan makes it voluntary to reduce the certain amount of chemicals that go into our waters, including the 2 creeks that go through our community. But you and I, as city taxpayers, have to clean it up, but they don't have to stop putting it into the creek. So is that a fair allocation of the cost of fixing that? With the greatest respect to my family and all your families, I'm sure too, in the rural communities, I don't think that's fair for you as a city. You already get stuck paying a disproportionate share of law enforcement in the county, among other things, in an urban area. It just doesn't seem fair to put it all on you. Other states have spread the costs more fairly. And I know that may not be the most politically popular thing to say, but it's the truth. There's going to be a cost. We need to stop putting as much junk in our water. And the people doing it and throughout our society need to pay their fair share of the cost of cleaning it up and keeping it clean. So this is a way of trying to come to a way that would be at least cost to us, in a way that would be the least disruptive. I think that's far better than the alternative of having it forced on us, especially in the current environment.
Thank you, Mr. Watson, for that. And I just wanted to inform you and the public that I have contacted Representative Hanusa and Representative Jacobson and asked them to please engage folks in DNR and elsewhere in Des Moines to try and get some ground truth as to what their expectations are and why. Because as Mr. Reeder said today, their standards seem to be rather across the board without any regard whatsoever to how well a particular city is treating its water. And I think we have a pretty darn good track record in that regard. So to treat us like you would any other sort of polluter, I think is quite a bit of a stretch for any bureaucrat to make across the board.
The DNR determines the amount of effluents, the amount of floatable particles in the water that's discharged. If you don't meet their standards, they don't let you dump into the river anymore. And so I don't know where it goes if we don't meet their standards, but so we have to do a study that hopefully can get us in compliance with them so that we can continue to dump into the river. Now, I don't disregard the fact that they sometimes overreach, but it is what it is, and hopefully by bringing in some professional help that's expert in this area, they can help us come into compliance, and we will be able to continue to use our sanitary sewer system.
And I think, I just want to make sure I'm clear. There is a set fee for the contract we're agreeing to tonight of $100,000. That's what's in the staff write-up. So I just want to be certain that that is what we're agreeing to.
The specific tasks they're under have, I think they call them task sheets. I'd call them the scope of work. That when I draft them in my day job, that's what I call them, but same thing. You know, how each bill comes out under that cap is left to as needed, but they can only spend the total amount.
Okay.
That's pretty standard in state governmental contracting. So I appreciate the concern with it. I'm less concerned.
By mutual agreement.
By mutual agreement.
The contractor just can't say, I'm going to start doing this work,
Oh,
and you're
no,
going to
no.
get charged for it.
Fair enough, quite
No,
right.
But we won't be seeing those individual
Now,
pieces or what's being studied.
we're agreeing to the $100,000 for the master plan study that they're doing.
Well, I agree. Those are a public document. We certainly can and should get those and review them closely as part of our oversight duties. I agree.
All right, any further discussion? All right, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Applications for permits and cancellations, 7A liquor licenses, 7B liquor license special events, and 7C cigarette permits.
Motion to approve 7A, B, and C inclusive.
Second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Madam Clerk, anyone requesting to be heard from the council?
None received.
Anyone from the audience care to address the council?
Make it quick. Bruce Kelly, 864 McKenzie Avenue, Bike Trail, McKenzie to Sims. Good night.
Anyone else?
Sir, you wanted to talk, you can talk now if you'd like. You want to talk earlier.
Oh.
You can still say whatever.
Well, there's still at least one more reading, so it's not too late to talk. It really
Dan
is.
Pauly, 930 Avenue L. I don't understand how she could own the property and it's zoned commercial. And then she goes, well, if you go to Pot County, it shows it's commercial.
They don't do
So-
zoning.
Huh?
They don't do zoning, though. The city does the zoning. It's on our zoning map as being residential.
Well, it might be, but if you look at Pot County, you know, the map, it shows that, you know, the building's on commercial and then 2 lots are commercial.
They might be taxed as commercial, but that's not their zoning. They're two different things. I know it's confusing.
Well, I know it's 2 different things.
Yeah.
But,
But I think a lot of times people assumed if they're tax commercial, the zoning's commercial too, and they should line up.
well, she's
But,
probably
but,
looking
but,
it
but in
up.
this case, they don't. So if I were that lady, I would, I'd protest my taxes on the part that's residential, because I'm overpaying by twice if I'm her.
Yeah.
But I live across 2 commercial places and it's no problem. So,
They were there when you bought your home.
well, yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that. You know, my big
And then
thing is-
neighbors probably figured that's all commercial too when they bought it, because, you know, it joins that building. And I bet if she went down there to build that building, the city probably would have okayed it. If she hadn't have sold it and went down to get a permit to put it on there, they'd have probably okayed it.
I don't think so, to be
I bet
honest
they
with you.
would have.
I don't think they would, to be frank.
I mean, they generally, that's part of the procedures is to check the zoning, but I can't guess what would have happened if,
I mean, mistakes happen and they could have missed it, but that could be true about anything, I guess.
I suppose.
But I'd like to think they'd catch it.
Yeah, they catch it after they sold it.
Well, I'd like to think they caught it
once
before
you
they
went-
build it. Otherwise,
I
that
have that.
person's certainly gotten some more rights to it. I'd say they'd have a much better argument with me, speaking for myself, if they've already built it and we let them. I wouldn't make them tear it down if it were up to me. But it isn't just up to me, just to be clear.
you know, I guess I would just say I did go check it because I thought that was weird too. But when I clicked on the last transfer on that property, when that current owner that owns Pac Tech bought it, when it transferred, it was literally coded as a multiple use property sale. So, you know, it was a known factor at the time she bought it. Now, whether or not they shared that information with the buyer, you know how that goes. You know, people do tend to not necessarily tell you the things you need to know, but as far as whether or not the county knew it at the time, they did, because that's how they posted the transfer.
It does say commercial on the site, though.
Yeah, on Pot
Yeah, I can
County,
see
it
where-
says
yeah, it does say commercial,
commercial.
so I can see where there's confusion.
And it shows all, you know, the building and the 2 lots, all one property. It wasn't like 2 different lots.
Right,
and-
no, I see that.
So their title commitment would have disabused
No,
them
no,
of
I'm
that.
saying like the average, like, you know, if someone's just looking, most people automatically go to this as a good way to look things up, you know, because it's
Oh.
an easily accessible, and so most people looking at it would think it's commercial.
I agree, and that's why, you know, I think sometimes people think we, including me, maybe particularly over-explain things, but I'd like people to to learn from these, so because you know this is confusing. It is. None of us. I wouldn't know any of this if I wasn't taught it or run into it here or elsewhere, and I think that's something just for other people to take away that. You know, you have to look in the so-called due diligence, which just in English means to do your homework. You got to really investigate all the different avenues, especially when you're putting your hard-earned cash down for property. Because the first answer you get may not be the whole story, and with no disrespect to anybody, you might not understand what it says. There are plenty of things I read that I don't understand, so I got to believe the same is true with everybody else.
All right, anyone from the council?
I just want to take a second to express my, not just sympathies, but just complete and utter dismay over what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, and just to express that I hope that we never have to see anything like that happen again. The discrimination, bigotry, and hate is a complete and total unacceptable behavior in today's society, and it's just so sad and upsetting to think that in today's world we still have people that think at such a horrifically unhuman level. So,
Here.
Anyone else? With that, we're adjourned.